Hi! If you watch my other videos, I sometimes create them inspired by clients who drop off their rackets. And if I find something interesting to share that can be useful and practical, that's how the story begins. Well, here's a case where my client dropped off his brand new rackets. However, I'll share a mishap that I hope never happens to you. But in the case of this video, I'll turn a negative situation into a positive one and share something that will be useful and practical. All right, let's go inside. All right, so let me set the stage for this story. I just completed 2 rackets before the one you see me stringing there with natural gut and a 20% pre-stretch. So then I got to these rackets, and we'll say they belong to Kaipo. They are new frames. They're the version 14 of his old pro staffs, and he wanted it strung at 58 with a poly-poly hybrid. So I proceeded to string the racket, and because I keep readings of RDC and dynamic tension, his normal RDC reading should be 59, 60, and the DT rating at 37. So after I strung his first racket, I did check the RDC, and it was at 73, and the DT up at 42. So then I was thinking, what did I do wrong? But I did check to make sure that the tension was correct, which was at 58. But then I checked again, and guess what the mishap was? Yes, if you guessed that the machine was still set on 20% pre-stretch, you're correct. Well, what do you think I did next? Well, I didn't cut out the strings. I'm gonna actually leave it overnight because Kaipo was gonna pick it up tomorrow. And on the second racket, I decided to string it at 10% pre-stretch, and for 2 reasons. One, I was just curious to find out how that would affect the reading. So in case you're curious, the RDC string bed deflection came out at 66 and the dynamic tension at 39. So the other purpose of doing this is I thought it would be a perfect opportunity for me to seat the grommets, and I'll be explaining what that is. I first learned about seating grommets when I strung at the US Open in 1994 with the Babolat competition stringing team. I was handed a Prince Graphite which belonged to Michael Chang, and I was instructed to string it, but with the purpose of seating the grommets overnight. Now, if you've never heard of this concept before of seating grommets, basically what I was doing was to form a groove in the plastic strip, the grommet strip, to break it in. He was the only player that went to this extent of breaking in the grommets. For other players, we were advised by the head stringer, Lucien Nugues, that we should compensate by increasing our reference tension by 1 kilogram or 2 pounds to compensate for grommets that are not seated. Since I already was recording string bed deflection for each of my clients' rackets, I had a pretty good idea of what the reading should be. So after my experience at the Open, I found that increasing the reference tension by 1 pound for rackets that were non-seated was enough to match the string bed deflection of rackets that had seated grommets. Now, since string bed deflection readings don't lie, I confidently continue this practice when stringing professional tournaments. So when using this practice at professional tournaments, at first I felt obligated that I needed to educate the player that I would be increasing their reference tension by 1 pound for any rackets that had new grommets. But then I quickly realized it can sometimes throw the player for a loop psychologically, so I decided not to say anything. Well, I'm happy to report that I've never had a complaint from a customer or a pro that their string job came out too tight on rackets that were non-seated. As I'm finishing up Kaipo's second racket, I thought I'd share another mishap that happened here at a challenger event in Hawaii. The player requested for 22 kilograms. I strung the racket, he came by, and luckily he came by early to pick it up. And he thought it was a little loose, so when I took a look at his racket, it was looser than any of the other rackets that I strung. So the only thing I could figure out is that I probably strung it at 22 pounds, which is 10 kilograms. I wonder what the string bed deflection was on that racket. But he gave me another set of strings. He wasn't too upset. I think he was just happy that I was able to correct the mishap before he had to go on the court with racket strung at 10 kilograms. All right, here's the final product, and we're gonna take a look at some readings on Kaipo's racket. So the previous readings I was getting on his rackets was at 37 on the DT. So we're gonna see if it matches up now. Okay, so it's right there. It's right at 37. And I'll go ahead and take the string bed deflection and see where we're at. I was getting readings on his rackets at about 59 to 60. And it's right there. All right, I think Kaipo will be happy with his new rackets. Now that I shared two of my stringing mishaps, and believe me, I've seen a lot in my 46 years of stringing, what was your funniest stringing mishap? Or maybe you'd rather not say. Thanks for watching, happy stringing, and let your strings play.